My name is Meg Stahula. I'll be your host for this Piper academic session about Hamline's psychology program. Just to give you a rundown for about the next hour or so is going to look like, I'm going to shortly turn over things to Professor Robin Parritz for a short presentation, followed by a Q&A during our panel. So please use the Q&A function /icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen to submit your questions for our panel later today. And then finally, I'll wrap up with some important next steps for upcoming events. Please remember that there are a lot of ways to stay connected with Hamline after our presentation today. If you're an admitted student, you should be joining our Class of 2024 Instagram and Facebook page. You can also visit the Hamline website to see our virtual events that we have coming up, and the link will be available for those in the chat now. And now I'm going to introduce our presenter for today, Dr. Robin Parritz. Dr. Robin Parritz received her undergraduate degree in psychology from Brandeis University and her PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Minnesota. Robin has been at Hamline since 1992 and is the chair of the psychology department. Robin's expertise is in developmental psychopathy and she teaches theories of psychotherapy, psychology of emotion, disorders of childhood, risk and resilience, and clinical psychology. Students taking classes with Professor Parritz will learn a range of academic and clinical approaches to understanding the presentations and treatments of psychopathology across the lifespan. Students will be challenged to develop more complex ways of thinking about children, disorders, and development, to consider interdisciplinary perspectives on risk and resilience. Robin is also the author of a textbook called Disorders of Childhood, now in its 3rd edition, and is currently working on a new book focused on risk and resilience. Robin, thanks for joining us this evening.
Sure, I am happy to be here. I'm not going to share my screen. Hope that goes well. Is that working? Okay.
Yeah, looks good from here.
Okay. So I'm going to provide a brief overview of the psych department and the psychology major, and provide enough detail so you get a sense of what we're like and what we do, but also leave some time for questions and follow-up. So this is kind of the structure of the talk. I'll spend a little time talking about the faculty in the department, our students, our majors, about the program as a whole, about some individual courses, and then about internships, research, and careers, because that's always a good thing. But I'll start with faculty. We have a full range of psychology professors with specific expertise. So we have clinicians, clinical psychologists. We have 2 clinical psychologists at Hamline, one who's focused on children, that's me, and one focused on adults. We have a professor who is focused on developmental psychology, so a real interest in children, but also in aging. We have a psychologist who is a cognitive neuroscientist. We have a brand new psychologist joining us in the fall of 2020, a brand new social psychologist. And we have somebody who's an expert on families and family development. So we have a whole range of faculty in the department. We're a relatively large department at Hamline. That is a positive for a lot of reasons. One positive from the faculty perspective is that all of us teach courses that we're passionate about. Whether we're teaching general psych or intro to psych, or we're teaching research methods, or we're teaching disorders of childhood or family development or lifespan or abnormal, whatever we're teaching, the person teaching you has expertise and passion for the topic. And we try very hard to help students understand the material, but we often say that we are very lucky to teach in our areas, but we also are lucky to teach students who are almost always interested in taking our courses. People don't usually, even if you're not a psych major, you don't usually take psych courses if you're not interested in the material. So we benefit a lot from that. Every single one of us loves teaching, and that is the primary thing that we do. All of us are involved in research and scholarship, and we encourage students to get involved in our research. We have lots of things that we're interested in studying. I've studied emotion with students. I've studied the stigma of mental illness. Other people are studying gambling and substance use disorders. Other people are studying families. Some people are studying brain development and brain injury. So we really have a lot of different types of research that occur and that we are conducting and that we're interested in. One of the most important things we do as faculty members at Hamline is mentor students. And the primary way we mentor students is through the advising relationships that we develop over time. When you come to Hamline, your first advisor is your first year seminar professor. And those professors are really interested in working with students in their first semester and getting them accustomed to college life and to how we learn at Hamline. But as soon as students know what their major is, and many students who are interested in psychology know that their major is psychology pretty quickly, those students can declare a major. And once you declare a major, you're paired with an advisor in the department. And that advisor-advisee relationship at its most basic, involves interactions around registration. What courses am I taking? Am I moving through the major okay? But advising relationships are more than about choosing classes. They're about finding your passion in the field. They're about figuring out how you're going to use your major once you graduate. And there's lots of ways you can use a psychology major. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think that in our department, the faculty are especially proud of their advising relationships with their students. We have a lot of advisees. We are the largest major in the College of Liberal Arts. So there are a lot of students in our department. And so each of us has typically more majors, more advising than other faculty. But that's energizing to us. We like having those conversations with students, not only during advising weeks, but throughout the semester. The students in the department, students who are psych majors, are a diverse group. There are a lot of students who major in psychology because they see themselves in some kind of helping career, either as a psychologist, as a psychotherapist, somebody who works with kids or somebody who works with adults. That is probably the most common career pathway that students identify or talk about when they come to Hamline. But we have a lot of students who are interested in research. We have a lot of students who are interested in education. We actually have a lot of students who are interested in business and take psychology because a number of management programs like when students have psychology backgrounds. So students are very different in our department. Some of our students come in with 2, 3, or 4 courses they've taken already. They're transferring in AP credit or they're transferring in a PSEO course. That happens a lot. Other students are coming in with no psych at all, not having taken psychology in high school, but they're interested in psychology. People have told them for years that they would be a good psych major. So students come at lots of different starting points. One of the most valuable parts of being a psych major is, again, how many majors we have. So when you think about being at a smaller university like Hamline, you wonder, will there be other people who are interested in the same things I'm interested in? And if you're a psych major, the answer is yes. We are very strategic in the department about making sure that students who are interested in the same kinds of things know about other students. So this past year, there were first a lot of students, a higher number than usual, who were really interested in sports psychology. And we made sure that those 7 students who were all thinking about careers in sports psychology were talking to each other. And so we foster those connections. If you're interested in working with adolescents, there are people who are like you. If you're interested in education, if you're interested in business, whatever your interest is, there are a number of other students who are also interested. And so there's a built-in support system, there's a built-in friendship system. There's a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of positive energy in the department. The program the major is a 14-course major, which I'll show you in a moment. I have a super cool slide. It's a 14-course major, it's a 6-course minor, and I'll give you a little information about a brand new concentration that we're launching in the fall. What we've tried to do in the major is provide a really strong foundation so that no matter what the reason is for majoring in psychology, whether you want to be a clinician or a teacher or work in human resources or whatever, we want to make sure that students have a really strong foundation and they also have opportunities to pursue their interest areas. And I'll actually show you this on our curriculum map. It looks a little complicated now, but we've color-coded it for ease. So the blue courses, the filled in blue courses, are all required courses. The major is designed so everybody has a strong foundation. And then those are all 1,000 level courses. I think there's a 3,000 level research methods course in that blue section. But then in the middle section, where you have all the different colors, students are required to take one course from each domain. So there's a biological foundations domain, a self and development domain, an individuals, groups, and culture domain, and a mental health and mental illness domain. And students take at least one course in each area. But with a 14-course major, there's room for students, for example, and I'll use mental health, mental illness because that's my area. If you were interested in mental health, mental illness, you would likely take additional electives in that section. Or you could, if you were interested in kids, you can kind of pick the courses that are related to children in each of the areas so that you have a set of courses that works for you, but is coherent, provides a really strong basis. That's another conversation topic between students and their advisors. Which of the courses make the most sense for each individual student? It's not a major where we offer 10 courses and everybody takes the same 10. There's a little bit of flexibility, and we want to make sure that all students are able to pursue things that they're really interested in. On the right, the far right, you see our senior capstone courses. Everybody takes a capstone in psychology. And there again, students are taking their capstones based on something they're interested in. Maybe it's childhood and society, maybe it's clinical psych, maybe it's a brain-related course. So students have that kind of flexibility within the major. You can see the individual courses. There are a few other courses that aren't listed here. We have 2 new courses that are in our new curriculum map. Risk and Resilience is a new course. Family Development and Dynamics is a new course. We expect that our new faculty member, Jake Appleby, will develop his own senior level capstone. And so there'll be another course in that section. So the courses are both set in terms of providing a foundation, but there's a little bit of change. There's always something new going on in the department. In addition to a psychology major, our department collaborates with the biology department on a neuroscience major. students who complete the neuroscience major, I think there might be 17 courses in the neuroscience major. There are more courses in the neuroscience major than in psychology. Students take a full year of biology, a full year of chemistry, and then a mix of psychology and biology courses. Our cognitive neuroscience professor, Professor Eric Asp, collaborates with a biology professor on coordinating that program. We also share facilities. Eric Asp is the director of the Wesley and Lorraine Arts Cognitive Neuroscience Research Center, and that center kind of crosses psychology and neuroscience. So Eric has psychology students working with him and neuroscience students working with him on brain-related topics, obviously, some to do with aging, some to do with dementia, and some to do with how college students think about complex topics. Both psychology and neuroscience majors have a number of research and internship opportunities. As I mentioned before, each of the psych professors works with students. It somehow involves students in their own research, and that can that includes, you know, collecting data, going out in the community, working in the community to collect data. Sometimes it involves coding data. Sometimes it involves being in a research lab setting and asking a question. What have you thought about this? And having that kind of question or that issue embedded in somebody's research project so that you can kind of help design and move research forward. So we have those opportunities within the department with our Hamline faculty. We also have some collaborations with the University of Minnesota, with the Veterans Administration, with other institutions doing psychology-related research in the Twin Cities, and we can make connections with those institutions or places as well. Another new program we have at Hamline, launching in the fall, is a forensic psychology concentration. And this is not a standalone major. The forensic psychology concentration is a mix of psychology courses, criminal justice courses, and legal studies courses. And so right now, the start off is that students will declare one of three majors. You have to be a psych major, or a criminal justice major, or a legal studies major. And you complete the courses for that major, and then you take 6 other courses. So if you were a psych major, you would take an additional 3 courses in criminal justice, plus 3 more courses in legal studies, and that would be a psych major plus a criminal justice concentration. If you were a criminal justice major, you complete the requirements for that major, and then take courses in psychology and legal studies. And you graduate with a criminal justice major and a forensic psych concentration. And it works the same way in legal studies. We're really excited about this concentration. Right now, the 2 largest majors at Hamline are psychology and criminology and criminal justice. We are also the most popular double major, psychology and criminal justice. We are the most popular combination for a major and a minor. So what we are trying to do with this concentration is help students, again, have a set of courses that really make sense for them. Most students who are double majoring in psych and criminal justice are very interested in forensic topics, and we want to make sure that students are taking the right set or the right mix of courses, because it makes them more employable. It makes them, well, certainly more employable, but it also exposes students to the diversity of career pathways in forensic psychology. Sometimes people think, I want to be a forensic psychologist, I must be an FBI profiler. But in fact, there are not that many jobs for FBI profilers. So we want people who are interested in forensic psych to see the whole range of opportunities in that field. So that's brand new, launching in the fall. And then we have a number of internships and research opportunities and careers. So before I flip through this slide on careers, I will say that most students who major in psychology do a psychology-related internship. That should not be all that surprising. And students do them in all sorts of settings. Many students do an internship in a clinical setting. They're working with kids with autism, or they're working in a group home with adults with many different special needs, or they're working in a setting where individuals are struggling with addiction, or they're living in a halfway house after being in an inpatient setting. So lots of different clinical pathways, but students also have done non-clinical pathways where they're working on in community centers, or they're working in education centers, or they're working in research centers, or they're working at the VA. There's lots of different opportunities for students to do internships. Many students do more than one internship. As somebody who works with students who are interested in working with kids in clinical settings, it's often the case that students come in and think, I know I want to work with adolescents. That's my pathway. That's my passion. And then they do an internship with adolescents and realize, oh my goodness, that's actually not my passion. Maybe I should think about working with adults or working with younger kids. And those kinds of internship experiences are extremely valuable, because it's just as important to figure out what is not a good match for you as it is to figure out what is a good match for you. So sometimes it takes a couple of times to figure that out. Or sometimes you want to just see, do I want to work with kids in a school setting, or do I want to work with kids in a clinical setting? And so we have lots of connections. Every faculty member has connections. We have a really good career development center. And we also have Psych-Chi, which is the Honor Society for Psychology, and that's a nationwide group. And Hamline has a chapter, and the students in Psych-Chi are also very helpful in terms of sharing their experiences, sharing their knowledge, giving people pointers about where there are good internship possibilities. So we've got lots of internship options. In terms of careers, because some people think about careers early, some people think about careers, 10 minutes before they graduate. It's always interesting the second semester of the senior year to hear how many students don't have a kind of a pathway decided yet. There's lots you can do with a BA in psychology. There are a lot of questions. That's probably the question I'm asked most frequently. What can you do with a BA? And there are a lot of things you can do in terms of helping professions, in terms of mental health services and social services. One thing you can't do is you can't be a practicing psychologist. Sometimes you need an advanced degree, which we'll talk about in a moment. But on your way to an advanced degree, there are a number of entry-level positions that people are really excited to get. In business, our majors are accepted into management training programs, into human resource programs, and they can do that often straight out of Hamline. Sometimes it involves a minor in business or a double major in psychology and business. But many of our students are interested in management and human resources. Probably the third area that's most common, that's a common career pathway, is in education and government or public service. Many psychology majors also double major with education. They plan on being a teacher. Sometimes they're planning on doing some work in public health or in some other kind of government setting where they're kind of focused on well-being and health. With a BA or a BS in neuroscience, you often have an entry-level research type of job. Again, you're not going to be doing neuroscience research with patients. You're not going to be doing, you're not going to treat patients with neurological disorders, but you will be able to do entry-level work in the field, making sure that it's a good match before you go on to do additional graduate work, particularly in neuroscience. As most of you know, in order to practice as a psychologist, you would need an advanced degree, and many of our students pursue masters, and they pursue master's degrees in psychology, in counseling psychology, in school psychology, in industrial organizational psychology, in marriage and family counseling, in addiction counseling. Hamline has a collaborative program with Hazelden Betty Ford, where students can apply early into the Hazelden program, and with a recommendation from their advisor and a particular set of courses can be accepted early into Hazelden's master's program. So people can do lots of different things with a BA or a master's or a more advanced degree, a PhD or a PsyD. And faculty, again, are very happy to talk with students about multiple career paths. Many students come in and they know what they want to do, but there are way more students who come in and they think they might do, 5 or 6 different things. And that's great. That's fine. You don't have to know what you want to do right now, because you get to explore over your college years all the different areas that you hadn't been aware of, or new courses or new combinations. And so we're excited to explore that with you. And that's how I will end this part of the presentation, so we have time for questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Professor Parritz.
Sure.
That was a super informative presentation. So we are going to now take some questions from our audience this evening. As a reminder for everyone, you can submit questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And we'll get started right away here. Professor Parritz, we're curious about whether or not students should have a strong aptitude for math if they're pursuing a profession in psychology.
You don't need a particularly strong aptitude for math. You will encounter math along the way. You will see some math in a statistics course. We have a required statistics course in the major. You will see it again in research methods when you have to use statistics. Sometimes you'll see it in an upper level course. So it's not a requirement. There are no math courses that are required for the major. What we try to say to students who are nervous about their math aptitude or their math skills, is that we work really hard with students in our statistics course to make sure that the statistics make sense. It's not about learning a bunch of formulas that don't have some real world application. It's about how can I use statistics to answer some of the questions I have about, personality or about development. So we provide support. We always have statistics tutors and research methods tutors, but that should not be anybody's concern, that, you need to have, you need to be in love with math to be a psych major. Okay.
Awesome. That's good to know. The next question, there might be a bias here, but what courses do you think that students find most challenging within the psychology major, and why?
Well, I would say that by far the most challenging courses students talk about are the courses in the biological foundations sequence. So we have 2 courses in that sequence, a 1,000 level course called Brain and Behavior and a 3,000 level course called Cognitive Neuroscience. And I would say those 2 are challenging courses. The department is really interested, again, in having students have a strong foundation. There's really no way to have a strong foundation in psychology without understanding brain-behavior relationships. That's the direction the field is going. There's more and more interest in brain development, in brain functioning, in neuroscience. And we want to make sure our students are able to participate in that, the direction of the field. And even if that's not what you want to focus on, it's really important to understand that. One of the things we did recently is we had 2 3,000 level or intermediate level courses on biological foundations. It took us a little while, but we did realize that we should make one of those a prerequisite for the other. And so recently we've got a 1,000 level course that really prepares students to do well in the upper level course. And it's a challenging course. You know, students really, if it's not your main interest, you know, if biological function isn't your main interest, or that wasn't something that you really focused on in high school, these will be challenging courses. They're not all that challenging for people who love biology and people who, you know, who love that kind of stuff. For those students, it's often surprising to take a course in development and lifespan development or abnormal psychology and be challenged to think about, you know, what goes right in development and what goes wrong in development. And it might seem like it's kind of straightforward. Somebody will tell you how this works or how that doesn't, or how something doesn't work. But it's really hard for some students to, you know, appreciate the complexity of both everyday development and then, you know, unusual development. So it kind of depends on the student. But by far, people are, you know, it's the biological foundations.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Like I said, it probably is a little bit of a biased question.
But we want students to know that stuff. It's really important that students know that stuff.
Right. The foundation is super important.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of in a similar vein, or going off of what you were referencing just a moment ago, what types of students fit well with a psychology major? How do you know if psychology is the right fit for you?
Well, so many students are psych majors. I mean, right now we have, I don't know, 150, 160 psych majors. And as you can imagine, there's 160 different reasons to be a psych major, to look like a psych major. I would say that most people, when they talk about declaring the major, and often people are talking to me when they're thinking about declaring a major in psychology, they will say they were in a class and they knew immediately this was their passion. Sometimes it's a class they expected to be interesting, lifespan development or abnormal psych, but sometimes it's really a different class and they realized this really is what I want to do. I would say if you take 2 or 3 psych classes and you are not super excited by what you're learning, you're probably in the wrong major, because most of our majors are really excited to be in class. They're really excited to make connections. They, you know, they talk about what they're doing in other classes. So you can see the excitement, you can see the enthusiasm, and the engagement in the courses. Students are really excited to participate in psych courses because it's stuff that's meaningful to them. And we try very hard to make each of our courses meaningful to students.
That's awesome. Thanks. So the next question is one we got from an audience member. They're wondering if someone with a mental illness can be successful in the field of psychology.
Yes. The short answer is yes. The long answer is also yes. I would say there is a large percentage of students who major in psychology because they are either trying to figure themselves out or figure out someone else, their family, you know, someone else in their family or their whole family. So that is a pretty common entry point into the field. I think that, you know, as a clinical psychologist, I think that people from every background bring something important to the field. And certainly people's experiences with mental illness or struggles or bumps in the road or what, you know, however we want, you know, big, small, medium, and large bumps in the road. I think that people can do well in psychology, absolutely. I would say that our department and other students and potentially this particular student, it makes sense be planful about your courses so that you are not, if you are in an early part of a recovery, I would say you wouldn't want to have a semester that was overwhelmingly difficult. Like you can kind of ease right in, and then be strategic about that. Make sure that you've got all your resources in place so that when you come to a particularly difficult point in the semester or a particularly difficult point in the major, you're able to reach out, to talk, to figure out if you need to, take a breath and take a step back and then re-engage. But for sure, I would say it's absolutely possible and in fact, quite frequent in our department.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. So you mentioned this a little bit during your presentation, but I'm wondering if you can expand on any opportunities or recommendations you have for high school students who are interested in pursuing a career in psychology. How should they get started? If it's job shadowing, internships, classes, that kind of thing.
If you are already about to graduate, I think you don't have to do anything. You can just enroll and we'll get you, we'll get you on your way. If you haven't and you're thinking, I might want to be a psychologist or I might want to be a psychiatrist, often people come in and they know they want to do something with mental health, mental illness, and you think, well, there's 15 possible careers. You can be a psychiatrist, a psychologist, you can do your master's work, you can do lots of different things. And there it might be helpful to shadow people with different titles and different kinds of jobs, so you kind of know where your career is headed. We do some of that in the department. Students will figure out, for example, if they like kids or they like adults by taking, one or two classes and realizing I want to keep reading in there. And oh my God, I'm so glad I'm done. I don't have to read about a baby again for a really long time. So some of it you get. Sometimes it's about, taking advantage of opportunities. We have internship opportunities or speakers to hear about different pathways. So students for sure have shadowed people. Students have done internships, and people can find their own way. I have an honor student this year who's about to graduate, and she's very interested in sports psychology. And maybe you heard from my bio, nothing about me is an expert in sports psychology, but she was an extraordinarily determined young woman, and she networked with everyone she knew in the Twin Cities. She networked with people at St. Kate's and St. Thomas, and she actually did a summer research program at the University of Minnesota with a sociology professor there, and brought that work back to Hamline as her honors research and worked with me to develop it as a psychology honors project. So people have the opportunity to explore in different ways once they're here. I wouldn't necessarily run around all summer trying to get it all in. You can kind of flip around in Psychology Today and see what's interesting to you, or in, you can see what you're drawn to on social media, and that sometimes tells you what your pathway might be in psychology.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one student is curious if you can explain a little bit more about the forensic psychology concentration and what career options would be kind of available in forensic psychology.
So the forensic psychology concentration is actually a direct response to student interest. Students come in all the time asking me or the chair of criminal justice to have an independent major in forensic psychology. And all the time we say, I'm sorry, we can't do that. We have too many students flying around. And so that it is a response to students who are both specifically interested in forensic psychology, but also to how many students are interested in both psychology and criminology and criminal justice, and legal studies for that matter. And so for the last year and a half, the three departments, psychology, criminology and criminal justice, and legal studies, sat down and said, what would a good set of courses be for students who are interested in forensic psychology? And students might be interested in forensic psychology for lots of different reasons. I mentioned the FBI profiler before, and that is certainly one, area or a pathway for students. But forensic psychologists are really people who are thinking about psychology, criminology, and the law all at the same time. We have a forensic psychologist on the Hamline faculty who is actually not in the psychology department. She's in the criminology and criminal justice department. And so people are doing research on mass shootings. People are doing research on the best ways to respond to juveniles who engage in criminal behavior, engage in problematic behavior. Lots of stuff on training the police to work with individuals with mental illness in the community. So lots of different ways in which you might come to the topic of forensic psychology. The way that I think sometimes people forget or underemphasize has to do with the connections with the legal system. So if you read about jury consultants, that's forensic psychology. If you read about how people make decisions about guilt or innocence, that's forensic psychology. Every time a psychologist testifies as an expert in terms of this person is violent or this person is not going to be violent, that's forensic psychology. So it kind of depends on what students are most interested in. And then we work to make sure that you are in the right major, because you'll either choose psychology, criminal justice, or legal studies, but then that you've got the additional courses to make sure that you are on the right pathway, but also that you have the most flexibility. We want to make sure that if you go out there and you're working as a parole officer and it turns out that that was great for 2 years, but now you really want to do something else, that we've prepared you to pivot a little bit and do something else that's interesting and meaningful to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the clarification on that. I think that distinguishing the differences there was really helpful for me. So hopefully other people thought so too. But yeah, awesome. So another kind of clarifying question, what's the difference between neuroscience and psychology? I know you mentioned this a little bit, but.
Neuroscience is, if you like that biological foundations, that brain and behavior stuff, neuroscience is that expanded. So if you are a psych major, you have to take a couple of courses on brain and behavior. If you are a neuroscience major, that is your focus, brain and behavior. How does the brain work? How do neurological systems work? So you would take the basic biology courses that, for example, pre-med students take, a year of biology for biology majors, a year of chemistry, and then you take a mix of psychology and biology courses. So you might be taking additional courses in cell biology. You would for sure be taking cognitive neuroscience in our department. In biology, the neuroscience professor teaches neurological diseases and disorders. She also teaches neurobiology. So it's a real mix of mainly psych and bio, and that's the main distinction in neuroscience. The topic, the thing that you're interested in, you can be more interested in the biology side of it, and then you might study neurobiology. I wish I could think of the tiny little animals that the neurobiologist studies, and I'm totally going to blank on that. Or you could be more interested in the psychology side of it, like Eric, and study aging and dementia and brain processes and how we think. And you kind of need to know how the brain works in order to do that, but you could still be interested in more of the psychological implications.
Yeah, that's super awesome. It's really cool to hear about how psychology works with all of the different departments on campus. It's cool that
we are just a collaborative department. We also, I should have thrown this up there on the PowerPoint. We also have a brand new concentration that's launching in the fall with that's a partnership with the School of Business, and that's behavioral economics. And so students who are interested in behavioral economics are, why is it that people make economic decisions that don't make sense? Or why are they, why are they not saving money when they should? And why are they putting money over here when they shouldn't? And the answer is we don't act particularly rationally all the time. And so it's a combination of some economics courses with some psych courses, including cognitive neuroscience and brain and behavior, for how is it that people are thinking and how are they making decisions that have huge impacts that sometimes seem counterproductive, perhaps.
Yeah.
So that's another way we collaborate. We're a happy collaborative department.
Yeah, that's super neat. Awesome. Okay, so one of our attendees asked a question about research in music and human development, but I'd like you to kind of expand on the research opportunities more generally and how students can focus on something that they're interested by doing research.
Well, I'll do that in two parts. The first part is, if you were, we don't have anybody right now who's doing, whose main focus is music and development. But if that was something you were interested in, depending on the age range you were thinking about, or what specifically about music was most interesting to you, you could work out a plan with a professor to do more individual work. You might have to do some more, maybe some pre-work on an independent study, so that you would have some shared knowledge about music and development and psychological aspects of music. And so that's one pathway, kind of your individual pathway. And that works really well for students who have a strong interest and they really want to, run with it as quickly as possible. I will point out that we have 150 plus majors, so we actually can't do that with every single student. So sometimes students have a great idea and it takes a little more time to get off the ground. Probably more frequently in the department, people end up connecting with a professor whose research is closest to their area of interest. So if you were interested in substance abuse, gambling, personality disorders, you would make an appointment with Dr. Serena King. And you would say, these are the kinds of things I'm interested in. She has several studies going, and we'd figure out, which of these is a good match for you. So sometimes it's not about pursuing your idea immediately fully. Sometimes it's about getting a little bit of research experience in a lab group that's already running. And so there are various tasks that need to be completed. But sometimes it is about collaborating across departments, somebody in the music department and somebody in psychology who would be, perfectly happy to, develop a course with you or to pursue some research.
Great, thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Then this is kind of more of a fun question, but how have you found yourself using psychology in your day-to-day life outside of teaching, and how has psychology affected the way you view the world?
Well, psychology affects everything. And as a child clinician, it affects, I have my children. If you take a class with me, you'll hear me talk about my children and about how they did one thing, that I expected and another thing that I didn't. I think that being a psychologist informs everything I do. There's no way to stop being a psychologist. You can't watch a TV show without saying that doesn't make any sense. Or I'm asked all the time, is my kid doing this normal? Is this real? Is this okay? Is this not okay? And 99% of the time I get to say, it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. I would say that I try to be a natural psychologist when I'm outside of Hamline, so that I'm not, I think that my children would say that they know that their mom is a psychologist, but that they weren't like analyzed while they were kids. Mostly because I needed to not do work when I left Hamline. But I actually often say that one of the great joys of being a psychology professor is not about how many students graduate and pursue a PhD in child clinical psychology like I did. That's, you know, if that's what you want to do, great, more power to you. Seriously, it's like the best thing ever. But more importantly, I would say that in my department, people are concerned and most proud of students who graduate who are better partners, better romantic partners, better parents, better employees, kinder friends, people who can think about well-being and want to encourage others to pursue their dreams and their passions. That stuff I think is really in the forefront of everything we do in our department. And I think of it as a good thing. I think all the time that everybody should be taking psychology courses, as many as they can, because I think in some ways it helps you reflect on how you might be a better you. You know, it's not about being a better, you know, I don't need to be a better Meg. Meg doesn't need to be a better me. I just need to be better at what I am and what I'm trying to do. And I think psychology gives you the tools to do that. I think for sure, and this isn't as lighthearted, but I think during a pandemic, psychologists make a contribution to thinking about what is it we've lost, what are the kinds of things we need to do to reach out to make sure people are safe and well, how can we encourage resilience, how can we build in some structures, how do we support people who are, you know, stuck in their houses homeschooling their children. My kids who are all grown and out of the house for many years. But two of the three of them have said they are very grateful that I did not homeschool them because they thought I would be too strict. But you think about the support that's needed and how much care that's involved in negotiating our lives with so much uncertainty. And I think that is something psychology can contribute. And I think every one of us as a faculty member and every one of our majors is ready to make that contribution. It's a great field. I recommend it to anyone.
That's great. I don't think there could be a better note to end on, and we're officially out of questions from our audience. So I think we'll wrap up. I've got a few closing remarks for everyone, but first and foremost, of course, thank you, Professor Parritz, for joining us today and sharing the many opportunities available in the psychology department and covering neuroscience, biology, criminal justice criminology, business, legal studies.
When you've been here for 30 years, you can just talk about most of the programs.
Yes, your wisdom is so very appreciated. And of course, thank you to all of our attendees who are able to join us for our Piper academic session with Professor Parritz. If you have additional questions after the webinar this evening, know that you can schedule an individual meeting with an admission counselor like me by submitting a request, and the link to submit that visit request is in the chat. I'm always happy to answer people's questions. My whole team of admission counselors are just really eager to chat with students, so definitely feel free to reach out to us. And then the other thing is we're hoping that you all stay connected with us by joining us for more virtual events until we can meet in person again. This Thursday, May 24th or 21st at 4 p.m., we'll be hosting a Piper topic session about student success through faculty advising. We'll be hosting a panel of 4 faculty members from 4 different disciplines and departments to share their insights on how they assist, support, and advise students. If you're also considering a major in business or simply want to learn more about the Hamline University Business Program, join us next Tuesday for another Piper academic session. We'll be joined by a number of faculty and students for a panel discussion about the various concentration areas, including marketing, management, accounting, analytics, and much more. And finally, some reminders for our incoming first-year students. If you haven't already, the next step to secure your spot at Hamline is to pay your enrollment deposit. The deadline has been extended to June 1st to submit your enrollment deposit and complete your housing application and sign up for summer orientation. So we've got a lot of great next steps for our incoming students. If you have any questions, again, connect with your admission counselor. And if you are planning to live on campus, be sure to complete your housing application and create your roommate group by July 1st. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to having you join us for another virtual event soon, and have a good rest of your Tuesday. Bye, everyone.